So up next is Bastard. This old manga that inspired a lot of the big manga heavyweights we know today, readapted for a Netflix release. Let's see how it do.
Alright, I watched about an episode and a half of Bastard Heavy Metal Fantasy. I gotta be honest, I'm real disappointed. I didn't know a whole lot about this one other than this is a series based on a manga from the 80s, or at least started from in the 80s. Apparently this series ran for like fucking over 20 years. And then it had a 6-episode OVA in the 90s, like the early 90s, and then it just kind of fell into obscurity, at least in the Western fandom. But I've also been led to believe that this series is also very influential with manga writers. In particular, I believe Togashi, the writer of Hunter x Hunter, was inspired to some degree by Bastard. So, and I can certainly see that in a lot of instances. Like just the general world building of it all, the way that things look, the way that things are constructed. I can kind of see that. And there's some, like, cool ideas in it. I do like the overall look of this world. It's pretty traditionally fantasy, but it's got, like, a darker, gothic tinge to it that I'm kind of into. The idea of naming everything after heavy metal bands and rock and roll bands is kind of cool, but predates JoJo doing it by quite a stretch. Or actually, no, I think this is roughly around the same time that JoJo would start doing it. Because I forgot that JoJo was doing it from the very beginning. So yeah, this is roughly around the same time, I think. So, that was kind of cool. Like, you had like Judas and Metallica, Anthrax, Megadeth, Guns N' Roses, whole spectrum of heavy metal and hard rock stuff. It had kind of a cool vibe to it. And also, holy fuck, these characters are hot. And specifically the lady characters. More specifically, Yoko. My god, she is fucking hot. The way that she is drawn in this show, when they want the shot to be horny, it is unbelievably fucking horny. I cannot understate that. This show, the girls are hot. I cannot understate that. I cannot overstate that, I should say. It is impossible for me to overstate that. This show has some hot girls in it. Some of the hottest I've seen in a very long time. Unfortunately, most of the show is just kind of boring. A lot of it is just people standing around doing nothing. Like, literally just doing nothing. And arguing about what they should do in very uninteresting ways. And then when people are doing something, it's not very interesting to look at. Like, I know I shouldn't project my expectations onto a show, but what I was thinking was, oh man, this is a manga from the 80s. They had some pretty hardcore, borderline gruesome stuff back then. And also, this is a Netflix exclusive. Not even in the matter of, oh, it aired on Japanese TV and Netflix licensed it. No, this is for Netflix. Netflix is the one platform that this is airing on. So, the series wouldn't have to conform to Japanese broadcast regulations. It wouldn't need to censor anything. We could get some of that grisly, gruesome 80s gore. And with this kind of setting, that seemed appropriate. And we didn't get that at all. Like, it's people just explode into red mist when they die. It's lame and uninventive. It's so boring. Like, there was one shot where I thought we were going to get more of it, like, where a guy gets hit by a spell and, like, the spell just, like, bursts out of all the orifices on his body for, like, half a second. I was like, oh, that's fucking hardcore. But that's, like, one instance. the rest of the show is super tame and uninteresting to look at. It's also not got a great aesthetic to it. I should say it doesn't have a great palette to it. The color design and the way that and the character designs aren't particularly interesting. I like the world design, that looks pretty cool, but there's nothing visually engaging about this show. Like, it's not incompetent. I'll give it that. It's not incompetently drawn. There's not like, it's not like melting everywhere, and it's not got like jank or anything, but it's also just not interesting to look at. Aside, like, it's very cleanly drawn, but not drawn in interesting ways. Like, I even just, out of curiosity, just decided to like skim through the first episode of the OVA, and it has way more interesting shot composition and directing and color direction than this reboot. So I might give the OVAs a shot. If the manga ever gets licensed here again, I'll probably give it a shot. But this show is just boring. It's just, I don't know how they made it I don't know how they made a heavy metal fantasy where a little boy who turns into a dark wizard after getting kissed by his Onei-chan, not blood related, but basically that, who is like one of the most powerful beings in the entire world and can basically melt people with his spells. And as far as, from what I've heard, fucks at some point in this series. Apparently that happens at some point. I don't know how they made all that boring, but they did. So, let's move on.
Alright, Bastard is coming off the list. Now, I was gonna do the Ancient Magus Bride OVAs next, but apparently the subs are a bit delayed from the actual release dates. Crunchyroll isn't simulcasting them. So we're gonna take this and move it down into like the fall section for now. Just to give it some breathing room. Hopefully it comes out this year. But in the meantime, we're going to jump into Cyberpunk Edgerunners. I hope it's as wild as I think it is for an Imaishi Trigger show. Let's go!
Alright, I just watched all of Cyberpunk Edgerunners, and boy do I have some thoughts. Before we get to that though, I do have to admit right now that this is where we come to kind of uncover that I kind of lied to you a little bit with this seasonal wrap-up show. Just a little bit. The premise of this entire production is that I can't trust anyone else's opinions on what is good. I can't even trust my own opinions on what is good until I see it. Therefore, I have to try out every show from every season just to make sure I don't miss anything that's good. Which is a little bit of a lie, because there is one exception with shows that, for the most part, I just avoid. And those shows are adaptations of video games. Really, the only exceptions to those are video games that I've already played or am already familiar with. Pokemon, Halo, Digimon. If I'm already familiar with the video game franchise, or if I've played it already, I'll give the anime a shot. But for the most part, if it's an anime adapting a video game, be it a JRPG or a shooter or anything, I tend to avoid them because they try to cram 40 hours of story into, at most, 10 hours of content. And so, usually the story feels very rushed, the characters feel very flat, and the production usually isn't very good. The reason I gave Cyberpunk an exception, however, is because, A, from the looks of it, it's not directly based on the story of Cyberpunk 2077. I think that's the title of the game. Whatever. It's more of a side story, so the story aspect, not an issue. And the second reason is because it's a Studio Trigger anime. And I love me some Studio Trigger. Although, admittedly, this might be my hot take, I guess, about Trigger, is that Hiroyuki Imaishi, who is the guy who directed Edgerunners, is probably my least favorite Trigger director. Like, I like Yo-Yo Shinari more. I like Akira Amamiya. Bleh, too many. Akira Amamiya I like more. I definitely need to go back and rewatch Ino Battle, just to see how that holds up. I don't dislike Imaishi. I mean, pretty much all of his shows I've given like 8s, I think. Luluko, Kill la Kill, Gurren Lagann, Panty and Stocking, Promare. He's a very consistent director for me, and I just really like his stuff. Even like some of his older stuff, like Dead Leaves, is pretty cool. Although I will say that Luluko is my favorite Imaishi show, so that probably sets some expectations for me. But anyway, Cyberpunk plus Imaishi, I feel like I'm going to have a good time with this one. And for the most part, I had a good time with this one. It is at the same time very Imaishi and also very not Imaishi. Like, mostly in the scripting part. Like, the script and the story is where it's very much not Imaishi. It's not wacky, zany comedy explosions 100% of the time, which is a lot more of Imaishi's style. This feels a little bit more, I guess, grounded, but that's not really the right word either. It is definitely a lot more edgy. And I say that in a good way for the most part. Again, we'll get to complaints a little later, but I actually did like that this was edgy. Like, this is the kind of shit that Netflix anime should be making all the fucking time. Or at least way more often than they currently do. Like, we got blood, we got gore, we got tits, we got cursing out the wazoo. They should be taking way more advantage of this medium, of this online medium, to be more explicit with stuff, in my opinion. And Cyberpunk Edgerunners definitely took advantage of that in some really fucking cool ways. Honestly, with anime, there's not a lot of moments where I'm like, oh damn, that was a cool kill. Like, that's not really something that comes up for me. I don't know if that's anyone else's opinion, but like there will be like, ooh, that was a great punch, or that was like a cool combo of moves, but not really a holy shit, that guy got fucking wiped out kind of thing. And Edgerunners definitely gives you that. There are some. The gore in this is fucking good. Great action sequences. And that is the part where the show very much is an Imaishi show. In the visuals, in the action direction. It is explosive and bombastic. It's got that classic Imaishi style that's like those very hard colors, that where he like kind of flattens out the colors to make those impacts really strong. The framing is really fucking good. Although I will admit, in the first couple episodes, the frame felt a little cluttered at times, and it was kind of hard to read some of the earlier action sequences. But as the series went on, it started to clear up a bit, or maybe I just got used to it, who knows. But, yeah, great fucking action sequences. The pacing is just on all the time, just constantly going, never off the brakes whatsoever. Which is kind of what I expect from Imaishi. It just fucking goes. And it's just really good at being a cyberpunk action thriller. There are some drawbacks. Now, again, I want to remind everyone that this is a spoiler video. All of these are shows that I'm going to discuss in depth to some degree. So there's your warning. So the cast, on the whole, felt disposable a lot of the time. Like, I never, aside from, like, David and Lucy, you never really get a lot about these characters that makes you think, oh, this character's kind of important, and not just window dressing that will eventually be slaughtered for plot development. And that's pretty much what happens with most of the cast. Even the really cool characters end up biting it by the end. And I kind of wish, like, again, that's the edginess is also a double-edged sword, pun intended. So I kind of wish they had developed some of these characters a little bit more. But I'm not super upset by it, but it is a little, it makes them feel a little bit more superficial than they could have been. But aside from that, I think what the story goes for in terms of what it's trying to say is complicated. Like, it's very much, this is a hard cyberpunk story. This is, I'm just saying it, I'll just say it, it's not you don't get a happy ending here. This is a corporate, overreach dystopia. Most of the characters don't get out of it alive. Most of the characters eat themselves alive because of the things that they have to do to survive in this world. And this is, I think, the first Imaishi anime that is just a straight up bad ending. Like, not like a poorly written ending, like a visual novel bad end. Like, this is like the everyone fails kind of ending. Like, even with the bitter sweetness of Gurren Lagann, you still got like a happy, like, optimistic ending. I don't get the optimism in this one. Like, fucking even David's dead at the end of it. Rebecca, best girl, just gets fucking wiped from the sky by the legendary mercenary that decided to show up at the last minute. And it just ends with Lucy on the moon. Very sad. So I understand. I'm pretty sure they were going for the bad ending. And it's not like I didn't see it coming. Like, they foreshadow it pretty frickin' early on. But there's just something about it that's just not satisfying. And maybe that's the point, but it really makes me hesitant about rewatching it, especially considering that most of the characters, while fun and exciting to watch, are disposable. And so I'm left with a lot of very potent, very unsettled emotions at the end of my viewing here. And I really don't know what to make of it. I was hoping at least someone, aside from the character whose name I didn't learn until episode 7, would get out of this mostly unscathed. That being Falco, for some reason. And it was nice to see the corporate fixer guy, the guy who's just trying to scheme his way to the top by pitting everyone against each other. It was nice to just see him literally splatter against the pavement. But it's still a bitter ending at the end of it. Not even bittersweet, it's just bitter. Maybe someone else has a different opinion on this, but I don't see any hope in this ending whatsoever. I don't see any, like, I don't see Lucy is gonna start living a good life now at the end of this. That's not what I got out of that at all. So a little bit more than a bit disappointing, really. But man, I'm so conflicted on the show because again, it's also a very good looking show. Like this is fucking cool looking shit. Yo-Yo Shinari absolutely nailed all of the fucking character designs. Just all of them are good. There are no bad character designs in this show. There are no bad named characters. There are no bad designs for named characters in this show. It looks fucking great. And yeah, I'm very conflicted on this one. I have no idea what I'm going to score. Well, I have a rough range of what I'm going to score it, but won't know until I see the actual list. But I guess I'll say I will recommend this show if you've made it to this point in the video, but without seeing it. Just know that it's gonna have a bad ending. Like you're not gonna feel good at the end of this, or at least I didn't.
Alright, after much deliberation, I have decided on a place, and we are putting you, where is it? Nope. Right in here. Just under Love After World Domination, and you get a strong 7. Again, if the characters had been just a little bit stronger, or if it had like a little bit more meat to its themes, I think this could have been an 8. But, I mean, top 20 for the year, and we're only halfway through the year, that's pretty dang good. I kind of feel, honestly, I feel the same way about this one that I feel about Arcane. Was not as hyped on Arcane as everyone else, but still enjoyed it. Would still recommend. In any case, the last of the pre-end of season, summer season ending shit, we got JoJo Stone Ocean Part 2. I just binged all of Part 1 a little while ago and thought it was pretty decent, so let's see how Part 2 do.
Alright, well, I tried. I made it 2 episodes into Stone Ocean Part 2, which puts me 14 episodes into Stone Ocean as a whole, which I think was a valiant attempt on my part. I thought I was going to like this. I thought I was. And there are parts of it that I do like. Like, I think Jolene is one of the better JoJo protagonists in that she actually has a personality. That's definitely underselling a lot of JoJo protagonists, but I mean, after Giorno, I'll take fucking anything. But, yeah, I'm just kinda over JoJo, I think. Like, the joke has run its course. I'll give credit for the creativity of the extremes that they take the humor to. And there are a couple jokes that I thought were pretty funny. I mean, it fucking opens on a discussion about masturbation. So, immediately I'm like, okay, JoJo still finding ways to keep things fresh. But as the series went on, they really fucking drove this humor into the ground. It's just shouting constantly forever, which I know has been JoJo the whole time. I understand that that's always been JoJo. I just think I'm over it. So, really, the only JoJo parts that I think are good at this point are the ones with really good stories. So, 1, 2, and 4. And I know that's probably... I know that it's definitely a controversial opinion that 1 is good, but I actually like Part 1 quite a bit. 4 is still definitely my favorite, but yeah, I'm just kind of over it. And the fights are creative. They definitely are. Like the fucking Jumpin' Jack Flash fight. Loved that shit. But even that, the fights are starting to just get like, what the fuck are you even doing? Like, they're sort of just breaking weird logic rules at this point. Like, the weather report saves the day at the end of part 1, where he makes it rain toxic frogs. I'm like, that's a fucking stretch, my guy. Creative, I get it, but he literally just spawns toxic frogs out of nowhere. And I'm like, creative, but that's a fucking stretch. And then the Limp Bizkit fight, like, they're like, the alligator just starts, like, climbing up the wall, because apparently walls mean nothing to ghosts or zombies or whatever. But if that's the case, then why would it even need to climb at all? Why couldn't it just float? So that was fucking stupid. I'm just over it. And admittedly, I do think it looks better than... Well, it's more consistent than Part 5. I have a bit of an infamous video about Part 5, I guess, where I talk about how it looks like shit, which I still think it does. And I think the character designs are a lot stronger in this one overall, but it's less ambitious in a lot of ways too. This production overall seems very tame. So there's not a lot of... occasionally there's some really cool imagery and stuff, like the Limp Bizkit fight where the gator's just covered in blood. That looked really fucking cool. But, yeah, I'm just over JoJo. Sorry. I'll tune back in for Part 7 probably, because I guess that's a reboot, I think. I think it resets everything. So, yeah, done with JoJo.
Alright, JoJo is off the list. And the last one for this, like, first round of stuff that's already finished is Drifting Home, which is a movie that just came out on Netflix, I think. Literally today, as I'm recording this, the torrents are up. So let's check it out.
Alright, I just finished Drifting Home, the new Studio Colorido film that went up on Netflix. Had a pretty fun time with this one. I was a little concerned at first because, like, the first 15 minutes aren't particularly great. They're not awful, but they didn't forecast good things. Just very melodramatic in a not good way. But once the plot proper starts, it really just kicks off and goes. And I was also a little concerned that it was going to be very slow, because this is a 2-hour movie, which is kind of rare for anime films. You rarely hit the 2-hour mark on anime films. And a lot of times when they get to be that length, they tend to be just very bloated and slow. But this one, I rarely felt the length of it at all, aside from, like, maybe a superfluous action scene near the end that kind of didn't need to be there. But yeah, aside from that, really fun film. It's got a lot. It's also a very complicated film too in terms of emotions. Like, it's got a lot of complicated things to say about memory, about holding on to the past, about all these complicated emotions that these elementary schoolers are going through in a pivotal point in their lives. And I think the way it explored these themes through this weird alternate dimension that they get stuck in, through the personification of the apartment complex that they used to live in, through all these different, like, memory holes that they find themselves in, it explores these ideas in a pretty interesting way. And I feel like it came out the other end with something interesting to say. And I think for the most part, the characters interacting with this main theme are very well suited to executing it, and for the most part are pretty likable, sort of. I'll be honest, 2 of the characters are just completely superfluous and do nothing. Um, e- Except one is the big tough guy and one is the spastic one. So honestly, they're kind of superfluous. I wish they had gotten more than nothing. And one of the characters is just a straight up cunt. She is mean. And I understand why, because she's like crushing on the main character and she just wants to like shove out the other girl who's been with him the whole time. But still makes her kind of mean. I didn't hate her, but man, she's not nice. But really, a lot of it is centered around the main two characters in this, Natsume and already forgot the guy's name. Fuck. Kosako? Kotaro? I don't fucking remember. I literally just watched it. I know it starts with Ko, but they have a really fascinating relationship about how, like, in regards to their past and how they sort of grew up together and then, like, sort of split apart due to, like, his grandfather dying. And the weird, like, very, not weird, but the very complicated dynamic that they have makes this a really fascinating, like, idea to unravel as the film goes along. You sort of piece together how these two relate to each other, what their past is, what their dynamic is. Because, like, it's just really fun watching these two progress throughout the movie. And they're also just really cute to follow and watch do weird shenanigans and stuff. And I like that there is a decent amount of, like, actual conflict amongst all of the different characters. Like, they get stuck in this alternate dimension, basically, and emotions are obviously high. And so it kind of almost goes... I like the conflict of this film. It was surprising... It got surprisingly dramatic and surprisingly dark as well. Like, it got pretty intense in some certain moments in terms of, like, injury and stuff. Like, I was expecting this to be like a kid's film, and it kind of is, but it's a little bit darker for a kid's film than you might expect. So yeah, that was I just enjoyed this film. Got 2 hours of content, a lot to parse through in my brain just because it keeps going. Like, I think that's one of the strengths of the film, is it just keeps, like, not that there isn't any downtime, but, like, it really just kind of goes with the ideas that it has, and it just, like, keeps building on the ideas as the film progresses. Now, admittedly, again, I think a decent bit of it could have been cut, if I'm being honest. Like, this could have been cut down by at least 10 minutes, I think. But not so much that it felt like it was dragging any places. And a lot of that is also because this is just a really fucking good-looking film. It's Studio Colorido, and Studio Colorido makes good-looking shit. I don't think this is as impressive as... This is not their most impressive work, but it's still leaps and bounds better than a lot of other stuff I've seen lately. Like, the character designs on this are so fucking crisp and polished, and they ride that line between, like, the familiar and the fresh just to make it very pleasant to see all of these characters interacting with each other. The character acting is really solid. The backgrounds and, like, the environments that they interact in look really cool and are very well defined and detailed. Really strong color palette for this film. Just very pleasant production. Some of the compositing looked a little rough at some points, and There's a big CG action sequence again near the end that definitely could have looked better. But aside from that, great looking film. Also, there were some kind of editing issues that popped up every now and then, which was kind of weird. Editing's rarely something that you just outright see like failing, but it popped up here and there, so that was kind of weird. But yeah, I enjoyed this film. If you got 2 hours to spare, would throw it on Netflix or whatever, however you're going to watch it. Yeah, that's all I got to say. Let's go to the list.
Alright, Drifting Home is done, and we're going to put it, where was it? I'm going to put it right in here and give it a light 7. That was a good film. And that wraps up the first portion of the seasonal wrap-up show for summer 2022. Got a lot of stuff on here already, mostly movies, but a lot of couples O&As and series and stuff. But now it's time to jump into the list proper. Gonna go back to what we did last season, where most of it's gonna be random, except these shows down here. So join me in a couple weeks for that.